I am a writer, former actress, former dancer, former story editor. I've done a lot of things in my life. I'm an example of the sequential careers of a person. So the Ocean House is a hotel that has been here in this very spot since 1868. It was, once a very grande dame who declined over the decades until we came along in about 2004. The Ocean House had really deteriorated and was purchased by a developer from Fairfield County, Connecticut, who was going to knock it down and put in, I think, 11 houses. And there was a hue and cry all over Watch Hill. There were bumper stickers that said, "Save the Ocean House." And I think we stumbled into it, primarily my husband, Chuck. And I say this in all seriousness, because we didn't know at all what we were doing, I think that's why we did it. And I think that is often why people take on really monumental tasks. I think the second time something like that comes along in your life, you might think again, but the first time it comes along, it seems like a great idea. Well, summers in Watch Hill are magical. I'd never heard of Watch Hill when I was growing up in Warren, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. It's not a name that carried all the way there. So when I first met my husband, Chuck, he mentioned Watch Hill, and I had no idea where it was. And I was really astonished to get here because it is a little bit of Brigadoon. It does seem like a place out of another time. It's the little Bay Street and the merry-go-round and the cute shops and just the compactness of it. And then, it's kind of sea to shining sea. There you are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and the Sound out here on a peninsula. So it's very dramatically beautiful as well. Chuck and I met in the year 2000. I was going through a divorce and I was a bit of a broken bird, and he had been divorced for a long while. We each had children, and he also we both spend time now in the Catskills in Tannersville, which is a beautiful community that couldn't be more different from Watch Hill. It's like surf and turf. And a very close friend of mine has a house there, and she invited me to come up there one day in July of 2020, and lo and behold, I met Chuck. So I like to call my books identity thrillers, and by that I mean I'm really looking at that crossroads of where the revealed meets the hidden. That place in each of us. I think we all have secrets. Most of our secrets are quite benign, but once in a while you meet somebody who has really a whopper, and I find that fascinating. So I don't write the kinds of thrillers that are super terrifying. I don't write horror, and I don't write extremely violent books, but it's very Hitchcockian, if you will, though, that peeling of the onion of a person's secrets. The Ocean House author series began really 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, and it was just kind of piecemeal the first year. There were a number of us locally who'd written books, so we each, got up and talked about our books. Last year and this year, we've really streamlined it and created a series that we get solicited for now from authors and their publicity teams. It happens every Wednesday at 5 o'clock all summer long. Occasionally throughout the rest of the year, we have other special things like a thriller panel. And it's a short and very easy to digest format. I basically interview another author about his or her book. We do fiction and nonfiction. For the price of a ticket, which is very nominal, the guest gets the book and wine and some nice hors d'oeuvres and this beautiful seaside view and conversation with an author. So it's a lot of fun. Reef Road is a very personal book. It's fiction, but it's based on the murder of my mother's best friend, which happened on December the 10th, 1948 in Pittsburgh. And it's an unsolved crime to this day, and it's had a huge effect on my mother and to some degree me. And I really wanted, when the pandemic hit in March of 2020 and we were all shut down wherever we were, I happened to have been in Florida. I was doing a leg of the book tour for Finding Mrs. Ford, and everything came to a screeching halt. And I thought, you know, this is a moment, maybe I can dig in and research this real murder. As I researched it, and there's a lot available on the real murder now that would not even have been 10 years ago, but as I was researching it, I thought, I don't want to write this as nonfiction. I don't want to dig into this story and point fingers at possibly who I think did it or any of that stuff. And anyway, I don't write nonfiction. I think you can get to more crystallized truths often in fiction without all the pesky details of facts. I love nonfiction, but I think with fiction you can really kind of pick the point you want to make and get rid of some of those details. So the book evolved into a dual narrative of two women in Florida in the pandemic lockdown, which turned out to be a really conducive constraint to the thriller medium. So you have one woman who is researching the murder of her mother's best friend. Wonder who that is. Although I've assured my mother I've made the writer and her mother a lot crazier than we are. And you have a younger woman with two little children who's married to a very dishy fellow from Argentina who was last seen a few weeks into the pandemic lockdown, getting on a plane for Buenos Aires at Miami International in his face mask with the two toddlers in tow, and she cannot follow because of the quarantine lockdowns and the sealed borders. So there in this hothouse confined environment, you start to unravel what one woman has to do with the other. So the different part is really the true crime component of it. You know, it all goes together, our lives, our creativity, how we, string one thing to the other. I think it's all connected, going from acting to restoration and preservation to writing. It's all creation, and it's a great joy to be able to express something of myself through any of those forms. My favorite's writing, though.